What's up? You did it. You kept the band together. The party survived. Nobody quit. Nobody walked away. And now, you can finally see the finish line. Or can you? Because after escaping Kakishan, surviving the city of brass, and chasing Jhavhul across the plains, does the final wish actually deliver the ending the adventure path deserves? Or is it just another finale that expects the GM to do the heavy lifting? Hopefully by now, you've built your own version of the City of Brass, Katapesh, and Kelmarane, because this final book moves fast. And a lot of its biggest moments only land if you can make them land. So today, we're going to finish the journey. This is my review of Legacy of Fire, Book 6, The Final Wish. And we are going to break the whole finale down.
We came from so-called dust in our eyes, camels grown neath burning skies. The wind was sharp, the stars hung low, and Pale Mountain watched in silence below. Garavel led with his hollow stare, the packmaster's bolt cold in his hair. He said a merchant waits ahead.
Hello, and welcome back to the channel. If you're watching this video, there are 5 other videos that came before this one, because today we're finally diving into the Legacy of Fire Book 6, The Final Wish. And honestly, when I first opened this book, I was surprised by how straightforward it is. No massive mystery, no complicated sandbox, no sprawling political intrigue. Just find out what's happening. Save the day. Defeat the bad guy. Simple. But underneath that simplicity, I think there's a story here. A story that I think these authors, and maybe even the adventure path as a whole, never fully brings to the forefront. Also, later in this video, I've got some ideas to share with you guys about how to bring the story out and make the finale hit a lot harder at the table. So once again, let's save Kelmarane. But first, the lead title credit for this adventure goes to Robert G. McCreary. Rob first gained attention by reaching the top 4 in the 2008 RPG Superstar competition with a memorable mix of coin belts, ziggurat-filled jungles, and monkey goblins. As a freelancer, he contributed to the Pathfinder campaign setting line, several Pathfinder bestiaries, and Dungeon Denizens Revisited. His first major cover credit was actually this very first module, Legacy of Fire Book 6, The Final Wish. Later in 2009, Rob became an assistant editor in Paizo and eventually went on to become one of the founding members of the Paizo team behind the Starfinder role-playing game. He also wrote the opening adventure of the Dead Sun's Adventure Path, The Incident at Absalom Station. Some of his other Pathfinder works might include The Rivers Run Red, Masters of the Fallen Fortress, City of Seven Spheres, The God's Mouth Heresy, and Risen from the Sands. And honestly, once you know Rob has also worked on the City of Seven Spheres, you can kind of see some familiar design DNA here, especially in the way this module handles exploration, faction conflict, and conflict set piece encounters. So, your party has escaped the City of Brass and hopefully decided to return to Golarion. And honestly, it doesn't really matter where they go first, because sooner or later, they're going to hear the same thing. Kelmarane has fallen. Jhavhul and his genie army have occupied the town, led by a now corrupted former member of the Templars of Five Winds. This is also where Nefeshti finally steps fully into the story, and if your players haven't been keeping up with the lore at this point, don't worry, because Nefeshti is about to sit everyone down and explain exactly what Jhavhul has been planning the entire time. His goal: to gather 1,000 wishes for mortal souls and use that power to transform himself into something far worse than an Infridi, a spawn of Rovagog, known as Xotani the Firebleeder. And if he succeeds, Pale Mountain erupts and a catastrophic magical volcano explosion that destroys Kelmarane and potentially much of Katapesh itself. From there, the heroes begin planning the liberation of Kelmarane alongside Nefeshti and her genie allies. While her forces engage Jhavhul's main army, the heroes undertake a series of smaller missions designed to weaken the occupation and pave the way for the final assault. After defeating an ex-Templar leading the occupation, the heroes return to a familiar place, the House of the Beast. Now, mostly abandoned, the dungeon still hides a few surprises, including a return of a memorable enemy from Book 2. But the real discovery lies deeper. As the heroes revisit chambers they explored long ago, they finally uncover the truth behind a sealed doorway that has been waiting since the beginning of the campaign. Beyond it lies a massive underground volcanic dungeon known as Xotani's Grave, a sprawling network of lava-filled caverns where Jhavhul prepares his final transformation. So, structurally, this final book is actually incredibly simple. Return to Katapesh. Eventually, that's going to lead you to Kelmarane, and you're going to figure out what Jhavhul has been doing. And that ultimately leads to them wanting to retake the town, defeat whatever lieutenant or leadership that's been left behind, and then descend back into the House of Beasts for their final showdown. That's basically the entire adventure. That's it, folks. Go home. But with my group, the whole thing lasted about 6 sessions. Usually, in my opinion, a good adventure path should last from 12 to 13 sessions. And honestly, I think that's why this book either works really well or falls completely flat. Because by the time your players return from the City of Brass, they should have already feel like the campaign is reaching its critical mass. I think that is why I always recommend spending extra time in the City of Brass before letting them leave. If you watched my review on The Impossible Eye, I talked about using additional society scenarios and side content after escaping Bat Albazon. Because once the players get back to Galarion, the pacing changes completely. There shouldn't be time to casually shop in Katapesh. There shouldn't be downtime. The second they learn Jhavhul has occupied Kelmarane, the campaign should slam into that urgency, especially if you use the Kingmaster style rebuilding rules I talked about in my review of the Howl of the Carrion King. Because now Kelmarane just isn't a quest town. It's their town. They know the NPCs who live here. They know these businesses. They may have built these businesses. They are going to have relationships here. They're going to know people. They're going to have saved these people. Or maybe had a conversation here, or an event here, or a laugh there, or a joke here. There might even be people that they love. Now, suddenly the stakes become personal. And that's where the book starts working much better. This is also where Nefeshti finally enters the story in a major way. And honestly, I think this is one of the campaign's biggest missed opportunities. The adventure path slowly introduces members of the Templars of Five Winds throughout the campaign, but Nefeshti barely exists until the finale. Meanwhile, Pavashon dies off-screen, and Davishon, the lieutenant you're about to fight, basically just shows up just in time to get killed. That still, to this day, feels weak to me. If I run this campaign again, I'm going to change that immediately. We're going to introduce all 5 Templars right from Book 1. The opening monastery shouldn't just be about Vardashal, it should be about all of them. Their history, their relics, their philosophy. Maybe even ancient equipment tied to each Templar, similar to how the Tempest is introduced. Honestly, I'd probably even go further and mirror the players against them, making the heroes the modern-day reflections of the Five Winds themselves. Because by the time Nefeshti finally appears, she shouldn't feel like some brand new NPC. Cardzwan should reference her. Zaphid should reference her. Even Vardashal's lingering spirit or mold memory should mention her. She should already feel woven into the DNA of the campaign long before she actually appears in Book 6. Another idea that I've toyed with is making Nefeshti like a secret villain. Not evil exactly, but desperate. Because her entire motivation is finding Andrathi, the man that she helped get trapped inside Kakashan. Imagine if she was secretly one of the major factions searching for the Scroll of Kakashan back during Book 3, The Jackal's Price. Maybe she's the reason the scroll gets opened at all. Maybe Davashan betrays her because he realized she's willing to risk the entire world just to reunite with her lost lover. Maybe Pavashan dies during that failure. Maybe Davashan and Pavashan originally confront the party in Book 3 trying to claim the scroll for themselves. There are so many ideas there, and it just feels sparkling with imagination. That's amazing. But ultimately, they arrive a little late. And that's kind of the bittersweet feeling of finishing a long adventuring path like this, is right as you're ending it, you're finally understanding the campaign. And you want to kind of understand what it could have been better. What could have been that next step. And you ultimately just kind of want to run it again. Looking back, I definitely have regrets from my own run. I should have spent less time running the Red Sultana arc. I wish I had foreshadowed the House of the Beast much earlier. I wish I had introduced Nefeshti and the Templars right from the start. I wish I had used harsher time-based consequences. Something to really hit them when they took too long. I wish Kakashan had more mysteries hidden inside of it. Like it's its own world that the players just get lost there for like over 20 sessions. I wish Katapesh itself had more meaningful content, not only early game but late game, and isn't just this like place we get to visit once in a fleeting moment. And honestly, as you approach this finale, all of those unfinished ideas really should start floating back in your mind. But at some point, you have to focus the campaign back to the central conflict, and that is ultimately Jhavhul. The liberation of Kelmarane is actually pretty fun if you lean into it. Nefeshti wants to launch a direct assault on the city while the heroes perform kind of a targeted strike missions from behind enemy lines. This structure works well. It gives the finale momentum, and depending upon how heavily occupied you make Kelmarane, it can create real tension about collateral damage, civilian deaths. We're kind of trying to figure out whether the town is going to survive the siege at all. The one thing I really regret is the Brazen Claw from the Red Sultana arc has absolutely nothing to do with the Brazen Tower. You would think those themes would have some type of connection. They just don't. To continue, once the players enter the Brazen Tower, I highly recommend expanding it. Slow them down. Add custom encounters. Upgrade the Ifriti, upgrade the Jan. Add traps, increase hit die. Use stronger battlefield control. At this level, standard Pathfinder encounters start collapsing pretty quickly against optimized parties. One thing I added that my players loved was, when a single hero reached the basement prison level, they found recognizable NPCs imprisoned below there. People they knew, people they failed to save, still alive. And they would try to help, they would try to aid, they would throw rocks, they would shout encouragement. It made the dungeon feel personal in that little level. Another thing I strongly recommend is run the Liberation of Kelmarane, House of the Beast, Xotani's Grave. Run all of that as one continuous push. Don't let the players fully rest, because they arrive at Jhavhul with every spell slot and ability untouched. The final fight can end much faster than you expect. So the book already hints at mounting pressure, earthquakes, lightning over the Pale Mountain, volcanic tremors. Lean hard into those signs. Make the world feel like it's about to end. And of course, there is Xotani's Grave. Honestly, it's kind of basically a middle school dungeon design. 3 corridors, all roads lead to the same boss, which means, players are going to burn through it way faster than you'd expect. It's not like they're going to sit there and go down each corridor before they do the last boss. No, they're just going to pick something. They're going to go down it. It's going to be 1, 2, 3, boom. There we go. It just goes so quickly. So read each of the rooms carefully, prepare to adapt. For my game, I brought Xotani the Fire Bleeder into the initiative early, even before Jhavhul transformed. On Xotani's initiative count, the dungeon itself also attacked. Walls of fire, lava tentacles, volcanic eruptions. This environment kind of became part of the boss fight. Naturally, I also did rebuild Jhavhul heavily using the elephant in the room. The environment became part of the boss fight. It also it helped to rebuild Jhavhul. We're using the elephant in the room system. It's the feat rules. It gives you additional combat options. And then of course, I afford those same things to my monsters, which of course is going to end them up with extra support, extra feats, power attack, so on and so forth. One thing I absolutely loved was showing the consequences of Jhavhul's wishes. Throughout the campaign, I added heroes, or I should say, I added NPCs whose lives have been transformed by wishes. Maybe a man who wished for a family, or an alchemist who wished for the tallest tower in Katapesh, and a merchant who wished for limitless wealth. And when Jhavhul died, those wishes, they unraveled. They ceased to exist. That caused families to turn to dust, towers collapsed, magic faded. And I know that's probably not exactly how GD wishes is supposed to work mechanically, but emotionally, it hit hard. It had consequences for their good action, for them defeating Jhavhul and saving the world from Xotani the Firebleeder. I also added massive lines of people outside of Kelmarane, citizens from all across Katapesh, waiting for their chance at one of Jhavhul's 1,000 wishes. Because of course they would. The idea alone makes the whole situation feel bigger. And honestly, I don't think the campaign necessarily has to end with Jhavhul. Run an epilogue. Let the players decide what comes next. One of my heroes wanted to overthrow slavery in Katapesh and challenge the Packmasters themselves. That could become an entirely new campaign. I even considered rebuilding parts of a campaign adventure path known as Against the Scarlet Triad into a post-Legacy of Fire sequel involving the Packmasters. Maybe have some ancient technology beneath the Red Pyramid, and even maybe some Annihilator robots, something maybe inspired by the Iron Gods. At one point, I even had players chasing Packmasters into a rocket ship, trying to escape into space. And honestly, that sounds exactly like the kind of insane high-level Pathfinder nonsense that we all love. You could go even further. Have the Pale Mountain erupt. Have Xotani awaken, regardless of Jhavhul's death. Force the players into one final impossible battle against the fully unleashed spawn of Rovagog. The book says wishes are needed to permanently contain Xotani. You can expand it. What if the heroes need to gather 1,000 wishes to make sure he never awakens again? That's an entirely new campaign premise right there. Let's throw in time travel, second playthroughs. Players can maybe even become the new Templars of the Five Winds. There's so much potential buried inside Legacy of Fire. And that, I think, is the biggest takeaway from Book 6. The actual module is short. At first glance, it almost feels empty. But some of the most important ideas in the entire campaign are kind of still buried in those little tiny paragraphs, with also no art, no emphasis. That's kind of why you should probably read this book first. You should read Book 6 early, possibly as early as Book 1, because understanding where the campaign ends helps you build a much stronger beginning. Overall, there's nothing really wrong with the Final Wish, other than page count. The Adventure Path spent 5 entire books, building toward an epic finale. And honestly, the ending needed more room to breathe than it was given. A lot of this book feels, here's the outline, now go fill the blanks in yourself. And while that can obviously be frustrating, I understand why it was written that way. At this point, it's a long-running campaign. Every table, every version of Legacy of Fire, with each different GM, is completely different. Some groups rebuilt Kelmarane into a kingdom. Some players fell in love with NPCs. Some groups spent months in Katapesh or the City of Brass. Others blasted through entire arcs in a few sessions. So the finale almost has to be written in broad strokes just to catch every possible version of the campaign. And honestly, that flexibility does help a GM wrap their own story around the ending. Where this book definitely struggles, though, is the dungeon design. The Brazen Tower is functional. Xotani's Grave works, but neither of them is going to be the heights of the House of the Beast or the Bat Albazan. Those earlier dungeons felt layered, memorable, alive. And in comparison, the final dungeons here, they're smaller, and you're going to run them faster than you expect for the climax of your 6 books campaign. As for world building, honestly, there really isn't much here. Strangely enough, I don't think the book actually needs it. The scope of the adventure is intentionally narrow. Jhavhul has returned. Kelmarane is occupied. The world is running out of time. That laser-focused structure gives the final momentum. And the good news is you absolutely can run this book straight out of the box, probably more easily than any other book in the Adventure Path. But if you do, it may feel surprisingly short, which means most of the GM effort won't come from rewriting plot lines or building giant sandboxes. Your effort comes from making the finale feel worthy of the journey. That means expanding encounters, upgrading enemies, making Kelmarane feel personal, turning Jhavhul into a terrifying final boss, adding pressure, consequences, and emotions to these endings. Because at high-level Pathfinder play, standard encounters often collapse very quickly against these optimized parties. So I definitely recommend beefing up the combat encounters instead of running them exactly as written. Make the final battles brutal. Make the world feel unstable. Make the players feel like they are standing at the edge of a catastrophe. Because if you can do that, then the final wish becomes exactly what it needs to be. A satisfying ending to one of Pathfinder's most ambitious adventure paths. Look, at the end of the day, it honestly doesn't matter what I think about this book, because I love Paizo's Legacy of Fire. Its flaws are there for us as GMs to see, study, and approve upon. And honestly, that's part of the fun. This has been the final review in my full book, 1 through 6, breakdown of the Legacy of Fire Adventure Path. Now, I'll probably still make a few more videos covering the setting itself, extra ideas and things I change or expand on. But this officially wraps up the 6-part review series. And honestly, thank you guys for sticking with me through it, all of it. For the next Adventure Path review series, I'm thinking about diving into either Serpent Skull, maybe even followed by some Jade Region. So if you enjoy Pathfinder deep dives, campaign rewrites, GM prep, and discussions about how to actually run these massive adventure paths at a table, stick around. And as always, I'll see you at the table.
He said a merchant waits ahead with dreams of gold and kin long dead. And then we saw it rise and stalk, a twisted tree, 5 limbs like bark, but shaped like talons, dry and black. The Sultan's claw, no turning back. Fire in the tent, smoke in the sky. A herald card drifts as a warning cry. The cyclone calls, war will hour's fate, a shadow crawled through the burning gate. A tiny fiend with jackal snout, laughing death and spreading doubt. We hunted deep through scrub and thorn,